I told my son his father was dead. He said, "Mom, I'll call you tomorrow. It's Haley's birthday." He skipped the hospital. He skipped the funeral. 3 weeks later, he opened the letter from my lawyer and finally understood something. There is a price for choosing brunch over a burial, and that price can be written into a will. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't post a single angry status. I just changed where everything would go when I died. And that's what broke him. If you've ever been made to feel like you're too much for needing basic compassion, listen closely. Because this is the story of how I lost my husband, nearly lost my sanity, and quietly made sure my son would never use my love as an ATM again.
The morning my husband died was aggressively normal. Gray Ohio sky, dishwasher humming, radio playing some old Motown in the background. Mark sat at the kitchen table in his favorite ugly flannel shirt, the one with the missing button he refused to fix 'cause it was perfectly broken in. I was at the counter, wrestling with a grapefruit and pretending I liked it. He took a sip of coffee and made a face. "Marge," he groaned, tapping his spoon on the mug, "did you buy this off the bottom shelf again? If this generic sludge kills me, at least you'll finally feel guilty for shopping sales." I rolled my eyes and flicked a bit of grapefruit at him. "Relax," I said. "If you die from discount coffee, that's on your arteries, not Kroger." He laughed, that crooked half-smile I loved. Back then, I thought we were joking about money. I thought money was just something we complained about and stretched. I didn't know yet that money, and who felt entitled to it, was gonna know my family apart. He lifted the mug again, and then everything changed. In 1 second, his hand jerked. The spoon clinked onto the table. His eyes went wide and empty all at once, like someone turned the lights off behind them. At first, I thought he was goofing around. "Very funny," I said. "Mark, stop it." He tried to inhale. Nothing. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The knife fell from my hand and hit the floor. "Mark! Mark!" I was already moving. His body slumped sideways in the chair, heavy and wrong. His head rolled to one side, his lips tinged gray. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? My husband just collapsed. He's not breathing. Oh God, I think he's having a heart attack. The operator's voice was calm, clinical. "Now, I need you to stay with me." "Is he responsive?" "No, his eyes are open, but he's not here." "Is he breathing at all?" I don't think so." "All right, I'm dispatching an ambulance. Put the phone on speaker. I need you to start chest compressions." I did what she said. I pressed on the chest I've fallen asleep on 1,000 times, up and down, counting out loud like she told me, trying not to feel the way his ribs shifted onto my hands. "Keep going, ma'am. They're almost there." I kept going until 2 paramedics burst through the door with a stretcher and bags and that urgent energy you cling to like hope. They took one look, checked vitals, worked in fast practice motions. I heard words like massive MI, no pulse on arrival, unrecoverable. One of them gently took my hands away from his chest. Ma'am, I'm so sorry. It looks like he suffered a massive heart attack. Even with immediate intervention, this type is often unrecoverable. They were still talking when my brain stopped listening. They covered his face with a sheet, just like that. My husband, of 42 years, turned into a decedent. The kitchen suddenly felt too loud and too quiet at the same time. His coffee mug still sat on the table. The grapefruit bled onto the cutting board. The radio played on, oblivious. I should have felt something dramatic. Rage, collapsing sobs, something. Instead, all I felt was cold. I watched them roll him out my front door on a stretcher and knew one thing. I had to call our son. I had no idea that one phone call was about to make my heart break in a brand new way.
When the ambulance pulled away, the house sounded hollow. It was just me and the quiet. I picked up my phone. There was only one person who needed to know first. Our son, Daniel. I sat down in Mark's chair, the cushion still warm from where his body had been. I dialed. 1 ring, 2, 3. By 5, my heart was pounding so loud I could hear it. Finally. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" Daniel shouted over background noise. I heard laughter, clinking glasses, some upbeat song. "Danny," I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. It's your dad. He just collapsed. He's gone." Silence. For 1 second, I imagined him standing up, knocking his chair over and saying, "I'm on my way." Instead, he sighed. "Mom," he said, annoyed. "It's Haley's birthday. We're at brunch with everyone. Can we talk about this later? I really can't do this right now." I thought I misheard him. "Daniel," I repeated slowly, "your father is dead." "I heard you. I'm not saying I don't care, okay? This is not the time. We've got like 12 people here. Haley's been planning this for weeks. Let me call you tonight. We'll figure out flights and whatever. I can't drop everything this second." Have you ever had a sound suck all the air out of your chest? That's what his voice did. I started. Then I stopped because I realized if I kept listening, I'd hear something I could never unhear. My thumb pressed the red button. Silence. I stared at the black screen. Somewhere in that same moment, a server probably brought out a cake with a sparkler. Someone shouted, "Happy birthday," and clinked the glass. My husband lay dead under a sheet. My son was worried about dessert. If you've ever been treated like your grief is inconvenient, you know that dizzy, unreal feeling. It wasn't just that he didn't come. It was that he didn't think he needed to. I set the phone down very gently, and without realizing it, I started grieving 2 people. My husband and the version of my son I thought I still had.
You might be thinking, wow, the son must have always been like this, cold, selfish. I wish it were that simple. Daniel wasn't born ungrateful. He came into our life like a miracle. Mark and I tried for years fertility treatments, prayers, little bargains whispered into the dark. When that cheap plastic death finally showed a plus sign, I screamed so loud Mark dropped his toffee. He was there for every appointment, every ultrasound. When Daniel was born, tiny, furious, perfect, Mark held him and whispered, I'll never let anything that happen to you, kiddo. Not if I can help it. That's where it started, I think. Not with Daniel, with us. Mark worked like 3 men those first years. Overnight stocking at the grocery store, HVAC repairs on weekends, full-time factory shifts in between. He'd come home dead on his feet, then drop to the floor to play blocks with Daniel. We're doing this so he doesn't have to, so he never has to worry like we did, he'd say. We wanted Daniel to have more. More chances, more comfort, more safety. Somewhere along the way, more quietly turned into everything. When Daniel forgot his homework, I drove it up to school. When he broke his bike throwing something dumb, Mark bought him a better one. When he flung the test, we blamed the teacher. Our first warning sign came early. The first time he maxed out a teen credit card on sneakers and junk food, Mark yelled about predatory lenders. Data didn't say, I messed up. He said they shouldn't let kids open accounts so easy. It was always someone else's fault. We ground him, have serious talks, promise no more bailouts. And then he'd look sad, say he was really trying. Mark would say, we've been there too, son, and write another check. Love without boundaries felt like kindness. It was actually self-erasure. We just didn't know that yet. When Daniel brought Haley home the first time, she came in with a big smile and a bigger personality. She hugged me like we were old friends. Your house is so humble, she said. I might mismatch dishes. Don't worry, we'll upgrade you one day. She laughed like it was a joke. I laughed too. That was my second warning. I ignored it. She worked in marketing. She liked words like manifestation, abundance, level up. Her Instagram was a steady stream of brunches, vacations, and hashtag wife life. At first, I thought, if she makes him happy, that's what matters. But there were little things. She'd flinch at Mark's work boots by the door, make jokes about her vintage furniture, talk about breaking generational poverty, even though we'd spent 40 years scraping and saving, so Daniel never knew true poverty. Still, when they got married, we gave more than we should. Mark pulled from his retirement to pay most of the reception. He helped with a chunk of their down payment so they wouldn't start married life in a rental. This is how we build generational wealth, he said, proud. We thought we were setting Daniel up for success. We were really setting up something else. A belief in his mind that no matter what happened, Mom and Dad would fix it. And nothing proves that faster than what happened when Mark died.
The funeral was on a Friday. I don't remember the exact date. Grief does something strange to time. It stretches some moments and deletes others.
I remember lilies, too many lilies. The coffee in the church hall tasting like hot cardboard. The sound of tissues crumpling. I remember standing by the casket with Mark looking like a wax version of himself and thinking he would hate that tie. People I hadn't seen in years came up, hugged me, said the same phrases on repeat. Such a good man. He'd give anyone the shirt off his back. He loved you and Daniel so much. Every time they said you and Daniel, it felt like a little paper cut because there was no Daniel. Every time the door opened, heads turned. Is that him? Maybe they got stuck in traffic. Flights are on us these days. Even the pastor kept glancing toward the back row as if my son might appear like a prodigal in the last 5 minutes. He didn't. Mark's bowling buddy, Ray, squeezed my shoulder so hard it hurt. I thought your boy would be front and center today, he said, eyes wet. Me too. At the little reception afterwards, the whispers started in earnest. Is he sick? Did something happen? Is Haley okay? As if they were the ones we should be worried about. The night before, when I'd called to confirm the time, Haley had answered. Oh, yeah, she'd said. Daniel's still thinking about whether he can come. We already paid for the cabin up north, and cancellation fees is close to the date are ridiculous. I'm just trying to protect my mental health, you know. I hadn't argued. I just hung up. I was not going to beg my own son to attend his father's funeral like it was a school play. When I got home that evening, the house felt even emptier than the church had. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat in Mark's recliner, and stared at nothing. My phone buzzed. Instagram notification. Haley had posted a photo. She was at a restaurant in a bright dress, a sparkler stuck in a dessert. Daniel's arm was around her, big smile on his face. The caption? Best birthday weekend ever with my favorite person. It had been posted right around the time the pastor was saying ashes to ashes. I put the phone face down on the table. My hands are shaking. That was the night I realized my son hadn't just missed his father's funeral. He'd buried something else too. His respect for us. I just hadn't found the proof yet. That came a week later in a navy blue folder at the back of Mark's desk.
Grief doesn't follow a schedule. About a week after the funeral, I woke at 3 a.m., convinced I'd heard Mark say my name. I reached across the bed. Cold sheets, empty space. I got up, pulled his old robe around my shoulders, and wandered into his little office. It smelled like paper, pens, and stale coffee. His glasses sat on the desk. A half-finished grocery list on yellow legal pad. Milk, eggs, coffee, real. I opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet without thinking. Inside, neat folders, labeled like only Mark labeled things. Taxes 2019, home insurance, retirement, car maintenance, and then, jammed in the back, a navy blue folder with black letters in his handwriting. Daniel helped. For a second, I almost closed the drawer, but curiosity and dread
are cousins. I cooled it out. Inside were printouts and statements, bank transfers from Mark's account to Daniel's. $600, $2,400, $5,000, and one for $11,000 with a note, urgent, H surgery. I flipped through page after page. Medical, rent, bridge loan, credit card payoff, car emergency. 15 transfers in 18 months. I had known about maybe 2. Not like this. Near the back, tucked between 2 statements, was a folded sheet of yellow legal paper. My heart knew what it was before my eyes did. Mark's handwriting. I unfolded it. Danny, I'm writing this because every time I try to say it on the phone, we get cut off or distracted. This is the second time you've told your mother one version of what's going on and told me another. I stayed quiet because I wanted to believe you were being straight with me. I don't mind helping. I will always help if you're honest. But if I find out you've used this money for something other than what you told me, or if you keep hiding how bad it is from your mom, I'll have no choice but to cut you off completely. I love you. That's why this has to stop. By Dad. At the bottom, in smaller writing, he'd underlined, "This has to stop." He never sent it. His heart stopped first. I sat down hard in his chair, the paper crinkling in my shaking hand. My mind kept flashing back. The way Mark looked tired lately. How he'd rub his chest sometimes after getting off the phone with Daniel. The way he'd say, "It's just a rough patch," but stare at the table too long. He hadn't just been fighting his arteries. He'd been fighting the realization that our son treated our savings account like a safety net he could yank any time he felt to breathe. And he'd been trying to shield me from knowing. My grief shifted shape that night. It wasn't just sad anymore. It was sharp, cold, focused. I'd put the letter back, closed the folder, locked the drawer, taped the key behind our wedding photo, just like he used to, and realized if I kept pretending everything was fine, I'd be erasing myself right along with them. Help is one thing. Being used is another. Love without boundaries isn't generosity. It's self-erasure. And I was done erasing myself. The next morning, I called our attorney.
Our attorney, Mr. Patel, had handled everything for years. Wills, house papers, boring adult things you pretend will never matter. He'd also sent a very kind card when Mark died. When I called and said, "I think my son is using me," he didn't sound surprised, just sad. "Come in," he said. "Bring whatever you have." I also brought something else to that meeting, my friend Carol's voice. A few days earlier, she stopped by with a casserole and a hug that almost broke me. I'd blurted the whole story. The brunch, the missed funeral, the Instagram post, the blue folder, and Mark's unsent letter. She listened quietly, then pulled a pamphlet from her purse.
Last year, our church did a seminar on this, she said. Elder financial abuse. It's not just scammers from other countries. Sometimes it's our own. I flinched at that word, abuse. Isn't that a little dramatic? I asked. Marge, she said gently, if this was a stranger your age draining your account with guilt and lies, what would you call it? I hadn't had an answer. Mr. Patel flipped through the folder now, reading Mark's letter more than once. Do you think I'm overreacting? I asked finally. He looked up, eyebrows drawn. No, he said. I think you're waking up. He pulled out our old wills. Last updated 10 years ago, he said. Everything to each other, then to Daniel. Simple. Made sense at the time. He set them down. Given what you've shown me, he said, leaving your estate directly to Daniel would be like pouring gasoline on a fire that's already burning. I thought of Monk's line. This has to stop. What are my options? I asked. He smiled faintly. More than you think. He explained trusts in simple English. We could put the house, savings, and Mark's retirement into a revocable living trust. Name our granddaughter, Lila, as the primary beneficiary. Have an independent trustee manage things until she was old enough to handle herself. Allow money to be used early only for education, basic living, or legitimate emergencies with receipts. Add a non-contest clause. If Daniel or Haley tried to challenge the trust or my will, they'd lose any potential role or access immediately and permanently. It sounded complicated. It also sounded like the first real boundary we had ever drawn. As we get older, he said, we think love means leaving everything to our children. But sometimes love means making sure they can't hurt you or themselves with what you leave. His words echoed something that had already been growing in my chest. Love without boundaries is not generosity. It's self-erasure. And I was done erasing myself and Mark. Pateau looked at Marjorie. What do you want, Marjorie? He asked. Not what's there, not what people will think. What do you want to happen when you're gone? I pictured Lila's freckles, the way she'd hugged me so hard my ribs popped. Then I pictured Daniel's face on that Instagram photo, smiling while I stood by a casket. I want everything to go to Lila, I said. The house, the savings, his retirement, everything. In a way that helps her, not them. And Daniel? He asked softly. I swallowed. He's had his inheritance, I said. He spent most of it while his father was still alive. I'm not doing that twice. We spent the next 2 hours drawing lines on paper where I'd never drawn them in life. When we were done, he slid a packet toward me. This will stand up, he said. Even if they push, especially if they push hard. One more thing, I said. I want to leave Lila a letter for when she's old enough to understand. His eyes softened. Good, he said, because she deserves the truth, not the spin that feels like a good explanation. That night at the same kitchen table where Mark had joked about coffee, I wrote 6 pages to my granddaughter. I told her about the grandpa she barely remembered, the man who'd worked overtime so she could have dance lessons, the man who'd given her father money he didn't have. I wrote, if you're reading this, it means none gone, and you're officially an adult. Adults deserve the truth. Not the version that makes everybody look good, but the one that helped you make better choices than we did. I sealed it in an envelope with her name and gave it to Patel. Then we turned to the next piece, telling my son, because
Wills are one thing on paper. They're another thing when a man who skipped his father's funeral realizes Mom's signature just closed his favorite bank.
Patel recommended we start simple, a direct, factual letter that didn't invite debate. No long explanations, no emotional essays. Just, this is what's happening. So he wrote, Daniel, as you know, your father has passed. I have met with Mr. Patel and updated my estate plan. My assets, house, savings, and your father's remaining retirement have been placed in a trust for Leela's benefit. I will not be leaving you a direct inheritance. This decision is based on ongoing patterns of financial behavior that I can no longer support. I am not doing this to punish you, but to protect what your father and I built. If you'd like to discuss this with Mr. Patel present, I'm open to a meeting. Mom. We sent it certified mail. 2 days later, I got the delivery confirmation. 3 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Mom, it's Daniel. Daniel's voice said when I listened. I got your letter. Is this some kind of joke or mistake? Call me. I called back. Hi, Daniel, I said. Mom, he said, words tumbling. You're not serious, right? A trust for Leela? Nothing for me? You can't just do that. Yes, I said calmly. I can. Silence. For God's sake, Mom, I'm your son. Yes, and your father was my husband. He worked his whole life, then died with a half-written letter in his desk threatening to cut you off because you were lying about what his money was paying for. Silence again. He hadn't known I'd seen the letter. That has nothing to do with this, he muttered. It has everything to do with this, I said. He died stressed and scared I'd be left with nothing. I'm making sure his worst fear doesn't come true. I heard muffled voices. Then a click. Marjorie, Haley's voice chimes in, sugar over skill. Hi, we're on speaker now. Look, we know you're grieving, but changing your whole will without even talking to Daniel, that's extreme. I didn't see either of you at my husband's funeral. That felt extreme too. She ignored that. We talked to a lawyer friend. Grief does weird things to people. Widows get weird about money. We just want to make sure nobody's taking advantage of you or feeding you ideas. I almost laughed. Let me be very clear. No one is feeding thee anything. I read your transfers. I read your father's letter. I watched you post best birthday ever while we buried him. My decision is based on that. She huffed. You're punishing us for needing help. No, I replied. I'm setting a boundary after helping for 10 years. Love without boundaries isn't generosity. It's self-erasure. I erased enough of myself while your husband let my calls go to voicemail. Daniel jumped back in. You're tearing this family apart. Over money? You started tearing this family apart when you chose a brunch reservation over your father's last goodbye. He went quiet. Hey, you tried one more angle. Well, just know, he said, If you keep going down this path, we may have to question if you're even capable of managing all this legally. There it was, the threat. Widows get weird about money. No, I answered, voice like ice. Widows finally see who was there for love and who was there for the excess called. And I hung up. My hand shook as I set the phone down. But underneath the shaking, something steadier thrummed. I had finally chosen myself. I thought that would be the worst conversation. I was wrong. The worst sound was yet to come. My granddaughter whispering, "Grandma, I've been recording things. I think you need to hear this."
I didn't plan to involve Leela. In my mind, she was still the little girl who'd fallen asleep with her head on Mark's shoulder during Finding Nemo, the kid who drew us wonky hearts with too many arms. I wanted to protect her from the ugly parts. But secrets leak. About a month after the letter, she asked to stay over for the weekend. She came with a duffel bag and a tired smile. We baked cookies, we watched movies, we didn't talk about Daniel or Haley. On Sunday afternoon, she hovered in the kitchen doorway while I washed dishes. "Grandma," she said. "Yeah, baby. Can I ask you something?" And he promised not to get mad. My stomach tightened. "I'll do my best," I said, drying my hands. She chewed her lip. Are you mad at Mark? Like, for real?" I thought about lying. I'm very hurt and very disappointed. That's different from me mad. Mad burns hot and fades. Disappointment sticks. She nodded, eyes glossy. "They fight about you a lot. Mom says you're unstable and trying to control us from the grave, which doesn't even make sense. Dad says he just wants peace. Then that letter came and it got worse." She looked at me like a little kid peeking out from behind a door. "Is it true?" she whispered. Did you cut Dad out of everything?" "Yes," I said. "No sugar, no spin. I changed some things, so your grandfather's work doesn't disappear into someone else's bad decisions. So you can go to school and not worry about rent." She blinked hard. "Mom says you did it to punish me. Because I'm closer to them?" That one hurt. "Sweetheart," I said, sitting down. "Sit with me." She did. "I would never punish you for what adults did," I said. "The trust is there so you don't have to clean up messes you didn't make. That's the opposite of punishment." She sniffed, wiped her nose with her sleeve. "I know they're lying," she said quietly. "I just don't know who to tell." Later, after I dropped her home, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No stamp, just my name, written in careful teenage cursive. Inside was a cheap black flash drive and a short note. "Grandma, I know they're mad. I'm scared. I hear things when they think I'm asleep. I know they're lying about you and the money. I don't know who to show this to, so I'm giving it to you.
I recorded some stuff in case you ever need proof. Please don't tell them it was me. I love you, L. My hands shook as I plugged the drive into my laptop. Folders popped up, labeled by date. Inside each, audio files, screenshots, and a few grainy videos taken from a bedroom doorway. I clicked one recording at random. Haley's voice filled my kitchen.
She's not thinking straight, Dan. This is textbook. Widows get weird about money. If we push a little, we can probably get someone to say she's not capable. Conservatorships happen all the time.
My jaw clenched. Daniel's voice answered, low and tired.
I don't want a conservatorship, Haley. I don't want to be cut out. It's my parents' money. It's my right. Then act like it, she snapped. She's emotional. That's leverage. We use it now or we lose everything.
Another file. If Leela stays on her good side, she might be able to get us access later. No sense burning that bridge yet. I stopped the recording. In my own kitchen, I was hearing my son and daughter-in-law plot ways to take my autonomy and possibly Leela's away from me while I was still very much alive. I scrolled to a short video labeled Kitchen Night. The camera shook slightly. It was pointed through a small gap in a doorway, showing a slice of Daniel and Haley's kitchen. Haley leaned on the counter, phone to her ear. If we push a little harder, she'll crack. We'll say she's confused. Get someone to question her state of mind. Once there's doubt, we can freeze the trust. I'm telling you, people do this all the time. Off screen, you could hear Leela's breath catch just before the video cut off. At the bottom of the folder was a tiny text file. Grandma, if anything that happens, I want someone to know I wasn't crazy. I heard what I heard. I believe you, L. I sat back staring at the screen. The legacy I thought I was leaving wasn't just money. It was this. A girl quietly documenting the truth because the adults in her house had turned honesty into a liability. I made 2 more copies of the drive. One for Mr. Patel, one for my fireproof box. Then I held a tiny plastic thing in my palm and made a second promise. I would not just protect Leela's inheritance. I would protect her voice because she was the first in her family brave enough to actually use it.
Haley found a lawyer. Of course she did. He sent a letter arguing that my recent legal action suggested I might be acting under undue influence and proposing family mediation to avoid a formal capacity hearing. In plain English, let's see if we can scare the old lady into undoing this before we drag her to court. Mr. Patel recommended we say yes, with conditions. Everything recorded, he said. Neutral mediator, no side deals. So, on a Tuesday afternoon, I sat in a beige conference room with glass walls, a box of tissues, and bottles of water lined up like soldiers. Karen, the mediator, introduced herself. Soft voice, kind eyes, posture like steel. Daniel and Kaylee walked in together. He looked 10 years older. She looked like she dressed for a courtroom drama. Sharp blazer, high heels, a face arranged in polite concern. Karen explained the process. Each of you will get a chance to speak, she said. My job is to understand, not to take sides. Kaylee jumped in before she finished. First of all, she said, hands folded like she was at a job interview, we love Marjorie.
We're just really concerned. She's been different since Mark died. Impulsive, secretive, making huge decisions without talking to family. If not like her. Karen nodded. Can you give examples? She asked. She changed her entire will and put everything in a trust for our 15-year-old, cutting out her own son. No warning, no discussion. That kind of drastic move, combined with grief, is a red flag. She glanced at me like, see how reasonable I sound? I stayed quiet. Karen turned to me. Marjorie, she said, how do you see it? I slid the folder across the table. This is why I changed my will, I said. Inside, a summary of the transfers, a copy of Mark's unsent letter, printouts of some flash drive transcripts. Karen read silently. When she reached the line where Mark wrote, "This has to stop," she frowned. When she got to Haley's recorded widows get weird about money strategy, her eyebrows shot up. She looked at Haley. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "did you make these statements?" Haley's face went pale, then red. "That's wildly out of context. People rant when they're upset." "Did you say them?" Karen repeated. "I said some of it," she admitted, "but it was venting. I wasn't actually going to." She trailed up. Karen turned to Daniel. "And this line, if Leela stays on her good side, she might be able to get us access later. Is that your voice?" Daniel stared at the table. "It sounds like me," he muttered. Karen leaned back. "In my professional opinion," she said, "what I'm seeing is not an impulsive reaction. It's a response to a long pattern of financial dependence, secrecy, and pressure. The trust and will changes appear reasonable, protective, and necessary." Haley's mask cracked. "So you're just taking her side?" she snapped. "I'm looking at behavior," Karen said. "You mentioned widows getting weird about money. From what I see, Marguerite isn't being weird. She's finally drawing boundaries." Haley crossed her arms. "We're just trying to protect our family," she insisted. I finally spoke. "No," I said calmly. "You're trying to protect your access." She turned on me. "You're tearing this family apart for money," she hissed. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "You're tearing it apart. Mark died alone in our kitchen. His own son didn't show up to the hospital or the funeral. You siphoned money behind my back and called it nautical. And you're worried about your inheritance?" She opened her mouth. I get going. "Peace isn't when everybody shuts up so you can have what you want. That's quiet. What I'm doing now, that's peace. It just sounds louder because you're used to my silence. Can I look between us? My recommendation is simple. The trust and will stand as written. Any relationship you have from here on out should be separated from expectations about money. If you push this legally, given this documentation, you will almost certainly lose and damage whatever is left of your relationships." Haley stood so quickly her chair squeaked. "This is ridiculous. Come on, Nan." She stormed out, heels clacking down the hallway. Daniel's dead seated, staring at his hands. "Mom," he said finally, voice rough, "I didn't know Dad felt like that." I said, "You didn't ask. He tried to call you the night before he died. His missed call is still on his phone." He flinched. "I just wanted peace," he said, quiet. "No," I said quietly, "you wanted quiet. There's a difference. Quiet doesn't demand anything from you. Peace asks for you to show up." He nodded slowly. "I don't know how we come back from this." I answered, "For the first time, that's not my job to figure it out." He stood, walked out without looking back. The door clicked shut. I sat alone, with mediator and my attorney, surrounded by paper proof of a lifetime of small, ignored warnings. I didn't feel victorious. I felt relieved. Not because I'd won, because the truth was finally somewhere other than my chest.
You'd think after a mediation like that, they'd back off. They didn't. Haley took her fight to the court of public opinion, Instagram and Facebook. Posts with captions like, "Some people weaponize money to control their loved ones, break the cycle," and "Being related doesn't make you entitled to someone's legacy of trauma." No names, but enough vague details that a few relatives messaged me asking, "Is everything okay? We saw some posts." I learned a new script. "Thank you for checking in. Daniel and I are working through some things. I'm safe." Because that was the truth that mattered. I was safe. At church, the pastor pulled me aside. "I've heard there's been tension," he said carefully. "Just wanted to make sure you know we're here for you." I gave him the short version. He sighed. He said, "Scripture talks more about how money can twist relationships than almost anything else. Protecting yourself from that isn't unloving, it's wise." My support group at the community center became my sanity. Retired teacher whose grandson borrowed her car and never brought it back. A widower whose daughter convinced him to invest in her boyfriend's scheme. Grandma whose niece moved in for a few months and was still on the couch for 2 years. When it was my turn, I said, "My son missed his father's funeral for a birthday brunch. He took tens of thousands of dollars behind my back. I changed my will so he can't do it again. Now I'm the villain." The others didn't look shocked. They nodded. "You're not the villain," one man said. "You're just the first person in your family to say no and mean it." That sentence sat in my chest like a small warm stone. Months passed. Lila kept coming to visit. She found rides, figured out bus routes, studied at Grandma's when home felt too heavy. Daniel called less. When he did, it was usually late, his voice low, like he didn't want Haley to hear. One night, almost a year after Mark died, my phone buzzed at 11 p.m. "Hello?" I said. "Hey, Mom," Daniel said. Outside, actually?" I went to the window. His car idled at the curb, headlights off. I stepped onto the porch. He walked up the steps slowly, shoulders slumped, hands jammed in his jacket pockets like a teenager again. "I got laid off," he said without small talk. "Company downsized, new management, cheaper guys. Pick a reason." "I'm sorry," I said. And I was. Losing a job hurts, even when it's partly your own doing. He continued, "We're behind on the townhouse, again. Haley's freaking out. She keeps saying if you hadn't locked everything away, we wouldn't be living paycheck to paycheck." He laughed bitterly. "She says you'd rather watch us drown and throw us a rope. Is that true?" I thought carefully. "I've thrown you ropes for 15 years. Your father threw you ropes until his hands bled. At some point, it stops being a rope and starts being a leash." He winced. "I'm trying now, I swear. I'm applying everywhere. Doing gig work, we cut the streaming, the eating out, everything that isn't food or bills. It's just, hard. For a moment, I saw the boy who'd stood in this same yard with scraped knees, holding a broken toy, saying, "I didn't mean to." I also saw the man who had let his father's last call ring out. Both were true. I believe you're trying now. I don't believe you were always trying before, and I can't unsee that. He nodded, wiped at his eyes. Haley wants to find another lawyer, he admitted. Someone aggressive who will go after the trust. She says we have rights. You do. You have the right to be mad, to never speak to me again, to tell whatever story about me you need to sleep at night. He held his gaze. What you don't have the right to is my savings. He laughed, a sharp, broken sound. That actually makes sense, he said. He stood. I should go, he said. Haley thinks I'm at the store. What are you buying? Time, he answered. Not doing great at it. He turned to leave, then paused. Mom? Yes? Thank you for not calling me a lost cause, even when I've acted like one. Don't make me regret it. He nodded and walked back to his car. As his taillights disappeared, I realized something. I couldn't rescue him. I couldn't punish him into being better either. All I could do was hold the line between love and self-erasure and let him decide what to do with that.
People think the big battles are in lawyers' offices. Sometimes the real battles happen at your own kitchen table over cold pizza. When Leela was 16, her school counselor called. She listed you as an emergency contact, the woman said. She asked to talk to you before her parents. Is that acceptable to you? Yes, I said, heart already in my throat. Leela arrived with red-rimmed eyes and a backpack that looked too heavy for her frame. She dropped into a chair. I don't want to go to the college they picked, she burst out. They're obsessed with this private school that costs a fortune. They keep saying, don't worry about the money, Grandma will take care of it. She imitated her mother's tone almost perfectly. Mom keeps talking about how if I play it right, I can unlock more of the trust for the family. She said, like I'm a key. She looked at me terrified. I don't want to be a key. I just want to be me. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Listen to me, I said. That trust is for you, your education, your home, your needs. It is not a prize for your parents. It's not a back door into my bank account. She sniffed. I feel like whatever I choose, I'm betraying someone. You're not, I replied. You're choosing between honesty and manipulation. That's not the same as choosing between Mom and Grandma. She was quiet for a moment. Would you hate me if I ever helped him with money? She asked. The question hurt more than anything Haley had ever said. I won't hate you, ever. But I'll be honest with you. Rescuing people who don't want to change is the fastest way to drown yourself. She nodded slowly. Can I talk to your lawyer? Mr. Patel sat with her for an hour a few days later. He explained how the trust worked, what she could ask for, what she could refuse.
He told her gently that as she got older, people might try to make her feel guilty for using her own resources to build her own life. When she left his office, she walked taller. Not because money had made her powerful, because knowledge had.
The day Lila turned 18, she came over with a manila envelope in her hands. "The lawyer gave me this," she said. "Can we read it together?" We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Mark had joked about coffee, where I'd done CPR, where I'd written my late-night letter. She opened the envelope carefully and unfolded 6 pages. My words from years earlier scared back at me in my own shaky handwriting. She read in silence. Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes she frowned. Once she wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Is it all still true?" she asked when she finished. "Yes," I said. "Some of the edges have softened. The facts haven't." She stood up and hugged me so hard I squeaked. "Thank you," she whispered, "for treating me like an adult, even when I was still a kid." Later, she pulled out her phone. "I want to show you something," she said. On the screen was a short video taken in a small courtroom. She stood in front of a judge, hands clasped. "And what would you like your legal name to be?" the judge asked. She took a breath. "Lila Marjorie Evans," she said. My name. I broke. "You didn't have to do that," I said through tears. "I know," she smiled. "That's why I wanted to. I wanted to carry the name of the woman who told me the truth when it would have been easier to lie." That afternoon, we went to her graduation. When they called Lila Marjorie Evans, she walked across the stage with her head high. In the back row, I saw Daniel. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes were red. He clapped like it hurt, and he didn't know if he deserved to. After the ceremony, Lila ran straight to me. "I picked my roommate," she said, grinning. "You." I laughed. "What?" "My lease starts in August. Community college is 10 minutes from here. I want to live with you, if that's okay." I couldn't speak for a second. Then I pulled her into a hug. "You'll hate how early I go to bed." "I'll hate your TV shows." "We'll survive." We never mentioned Haley that day. Her absence spoke louder than any comment could. So, did my son fall to his knees sobbing, beg forgiveness, get a job, and transform overnight into the perfect child? No. Did my daughter-in-law apologize, hand back the money, and bring me soup? Absolutely not. Real life isn't a neat little bowl. Here's what did happen. Daniel is better than he was. He has a steady job. He goes to therapy. He doesn't call asking for money anymore. And not just because he knows I won't send it. Sometimes he stops by, fixes a faucet, changes an air filter, sits on the porch and talks about Merc. Sometimes we sit in comfortable silence. Then occasionally there's a flash. "You know, if you just left things the way they were, life would be easier." And I remember why I did what I did. Haley and I don't speak. I don't wish her harm. I just wish she'd done less harm to us. Lila lives with me while she goes to school. My house is full again. Backpack on a chair. Headphones left on the couch. Textbook spread across the dining table. Some nights I fall asleep to the sound of her typing in the next room and think, this is what we were working for all along. Not granite countertops. Not Instagram posts of brunch. Stability. Safety. Choice. Sometimes she looks at Mark's picture on the wall and says, do you think he'd be proud of me? And I say yes. Not because of the grades or the trust, but because you chose honesty when lies would have gotten you more likes. If you're watching this and thinking, maybe I'm being too harsh, maybe I should just help one more time, let me tell you what it took me almost 70 years to learn. Helping is when you lend a hand to someone who's trying to climb. Enabling is when you lay down and let them walk on you so they don't have to stand up. Love without boundaries is not generosity. It's self-erasure. I didn't destroy my son's life. I stopped being for the version of his life that was built on my silence and his father's guilt. He told me, I'll call you tomorrow. I answered with something much louder than yelling. A trust. A letter. And a line in the sand that says, you can still have my love. You just can't have my undoing. And if a widow from Ohio can learn to choose herself after 42 years of putting everyone else first, baby, there is nothing stopping you from doing the same.